Hey everybody, this is Al with El Rey Collection, and I am going to respond today to a number of questions that I get, specifically about grading. I get a ton of questions every week. People asking me why, if they should grade this card, number one, and if they do grade the card, who they should grade it with, why, the pluses, the minuses. And so I do a lot of one off answering on this question, and I've gotten to the point where I just think it's better to document my thoughts. And then I can send this link to this video to anybody who asks me these questions, because I think there's a lot of nuance here, especially as we are sitting in November of 2021. And by the way, a lot of the philosophies here can totally change in a few months, and let alone a year. So I'm not sure this is going to have a super long half-life, this video, but at the very least, I think it's important because it's such a dynamic time in the hobby to document some of my thoughts and hopefully help some collectors, out with that. So to start off, I'm gonna say that unfortunately, as I am I need to have this relatively long disclaimer. I'm not making any recommendations, not promoting investing in cards. These are liquid assets. They're very difficult to trade. The trading costs are expensive. I'm not saying to buy or not to buy anything, and you should make up your own mind on this. And I'm not going to talk much about cards or players or values here. So I'm just going to talk about companies. So I think I don't need to go into a lot more depth than that. So the next, after this thing, I just want to remind people, grading itself is helpful to the hobby, but also can be hurtful to individuals and investors if you just blindly follow either what's on the slab or the grade. I implore all of you to look at the cards, and there's many times when I'll prefer a lower grade card from another higher grade card, regardless of the company, when looking at the card. So please do this. If you don't feel like you're talented enough to do that, well, maybe you can rely on the PWCC A's or E's, which is another set of eyes looking at cards. And decide what's important to you. Some people want super sharp corners. I like centering. I like clarity. I don't like fuzzy images. So you decide what's important to you and value that. Don't just there's a world of difference between some PSA 2s and other PSA 2s. So look carefully at that. Make these determinations. Make these calibrations yourself. The pop reports and research just on grades will not help you to make the right decision all of the time. So please implore you to do this. Another kind of, but grading is the best thing that we have right now for standardization, right? So, I think that we need to understand that while in many ways we hate grading, we also love it because it provides some level of standardization. Is it perfect? Absolutely not. Can it be misleading? Absolutely. Can they make mistakes? Sure. So you just need to come in with your eyes wide open and don't just buy a holder. There's so much of that going on. Now, this is at the high end of the market, where these, PSA 9s and 10s, where these guys, the fractionals play and the multimillionaires. There's a lot of buying the holder there because if you're a fractional, especially, you're just selling shares of a PSA 10. So no one's really holding that card. No one's looking at it. And it's a lot easier for them to do it. I would implore you, look at your cards. Decide if it's a nice copy or not nice copy. If it's undergraded or overgraded to your eyes. Okay? Again, there's a lot of personal preference in grading. You just may absolutely love the Beckett holders, and that's the way you go. Or you're a crazy, dedicated user of the PSA registry. Well, that's the way you go. Or you love the tux look with SGC. Well, then that's the way that you go. So in a way, I don't want to overcomplicate things. Some people prefer to store the PSA holders because you can fit more into a box. PSA, you can fit 50 into a small box like this, right? And then if you have a similar thing with SGC, it just takes up more space. They're thicker holders, right? So you need to calibrate what makes sense for you. If you're in a tiny apartment, PSA is gonna look better for you because it's more compact. The candy cane look. Other people just love the simplicity of the red labels. Others like the new SGC numbering systems. Others hate it. So, and we could go on and on talking about all these different companies. I'm going to focus on the big three because all the other ones, while I think maybe one or two of them come out the other side and are viable options for cards. I'm not ready to send any real cards to them, and if I'm not ready to do that, I would guess that unless you're a real short-term flipper, those probably aren't great options for you either. I'm also going to focus this mostly on the soccer, how it relates to soccer and why that's relevant, because soccer is different. So I'm going to do that. And again, these are my thoughts as of November 2021. You're going to have to calibrate for all your personal preferences and please don't just take mine. You're your own person. You have your own likes and dislikes, and we'll go that. So I also want to have a disclosure here because I think it's important for you to be able to calibrate my potential confirmation bias that everything I do is right, which, by the way, it's not. So I would highly recommend you do not do things the way that I do them. But at the very least, you can say, okay, well, he says that because he has this or he has that. So, I'd say, and these are very rough guesses. There are no mathematical spreadsheets behind this to get these exact numbers. But on average, I would say that I probably have about 70% of my slabs are SGC slabs. And I was probably the biggest single force of grading soccer with SGC over the past decade. About 20% of my slabs are in PSA holders, and about 10% are in BGS holders, or BVG. So some of you hopefully know that there's BGS with a white label, and then there's BVG with a brown label, and we'll get into that when we talk about Beckett. I would say, but interestingly, though only 20% of my slabs are PSA, I would guess that about more than half, 60, maybe even a tad more percent of my value are in PSA holders, and mostly, the high end, rare, Pele's, lots of, Cruyff and Maradona cards are in PSA holders, and we'll get into that. And then, ironically, I have some, big cards in BGS holders. I think I have Ronaldo 9.5, Mega Cracks. I've got a few really important Beckett cards, and we'll get into why Beckett makes sense and where, and that frankly sad story. And then while 70% of my cards are in SGC holders, I'd say it's probably only about 25% of the value, maybe slightly more. I don't know. Again, but SGC, just I have a lot of cards that are graded that at the time were probably less than the cost of the grading. So, I just have accumulated a ton of cards, and those people that are on the discard see me, I'll post, a multi-$1,000 card, but I'll also post a $50 card that I just like. I like the visual, and I'm a collector. So you'll see a lot of those cards as well. So without further ado, I just want you guys to remember my stats and exposure and my preferences should not be yours. I think this video will be helpful if it makes you think about how you want to collect and where your trade-offs are, so you can apply your preferences to the grading game. And to a certain extent, it is a little bit of a game, because you can really take huge cuts out of your potential returns if you do it incorrectly. Okay, so all right, so let's talk about the big boy in the house. PSA, obviously the leader, basically since inception. They have the market share. They literally have millions of cards in their backlogs. High preference from the market. If you compare virtually any card in a same grade, it's going to outsell any other grader, with a few exceptions of kind of rare vintage. And right now, my philosophy with PSA is that it's really, really, really hard not to grade elite cards with PSA. Now, there are some exceptions. Oh, shoot. I'm very sorry. I also want to acknowledge a potential confirmation bias that I have appeared in things like the SMR, and I have, they're doing some articles on some of my cards, PSA, as well as I have a, what do they call this? A pedigree, where PSA puts on my cards the Al Dragella collection. Okay, so that's a potential bias that I could have, right? I could say, wow, PSA, takes care of me. They have my name on a slab. That's cool. They publish stuff about my cards or me as a person. So I could have a bias there. So I just want to put that out. Actually, again, through time, I would say most of my cards are not in PSA holders, but I've also found PSA to be more responsive, but I'll get into that in a second. So with most elite cards, say I had a Pele rookie, an Alpha Bolliger or Alpha, whatever you want to call it, it's going to be hard not to grade that with PSA. I mean, I guess you could theoretically do that with SGC. I did before they were as valuable as they are today. So I think that certain issues, that even if they show up in some of the best hobby publications, like I'm going to show these again because these writers really enjoy serious props. So you've got Hugo Silva, Chromopedia. It's about Portuguese issues, so free commercial for him. So even if it shows up here and they talk about the album, show the packets, talk about how many players, PSA is going to want the full complete album of anything before they'll grade it, which is on one hand really good because they're really taking their documentation seriously, which is something they haven't always done. So this is a big improvement and a good long run strategic thing for them. Oh, by the way, here's the other one I was going to say. Difícil eran las de antes. This one's from Argentina, and this is Rafael Bitran. So if you have an issue that's in these books, just because it's in the book doesn't mean that they're going to grade it, right? So sometimes you either cannot find the full album, if there was an album. Most of the time there is an album in soccer. Or you can't find it, or you have a partial album, or maybe you just have some loose cards and nobody's really seen the album, which is the case with a lot of 20s to 30s cards out of Uruguay or Argentina, even to a certain extent. So they won't grade those, at least today. And while I think that's kind of unfortunate, you're kind of left with a choice, right? Not to grade them or go grade them with somebody who does grade them. In this case, here's a good example. An SGC would grade this card. This is a 1936 Lays, the football card. And this is really, it's by Nobleza Tobaccos. This is very, very documented cards. You'll find them in the hobby out there, and they And PSA won't grade cards like that. So sometimes you just can't grade even an elite card with them. You know, if you want to, because it's just not practical. The amount of effort it would take you to find the data that they require is just not worth it, right? Okay. PSA though also absolutely excels from my perspective in the registry. It's an amazing tool that I hadn't fully used. I had used the SGC registry, but the PSA one's so much more powerful. Like it'll allow you to collect all sorts of really cool sets, and they've been doing a great job with Matt Hendler, who is part of our Discord, but he works at PSA and he's been running the registry, and he's been creating some amazingly fun soccer sets. He just did the Ballon d'Or winners. He's done the 7 Wonders of Soccer Collecting World. And so it becomes a messy set, all sorts of Pele sets. I've seen him doing an Inter set I saw he was going to do. So, you know, he's really kind of making it fun. And the PSA registry is great because, hey, if you say, hey, I want to do this set, it also makes shopping for those cards easy, right? They know when they're coming up. They have links to, you know, auctions and eBay and stuff like that. It can also, you can actually click and get market prices. So they actually know what things have sold for. So you get auction results. You get pop reports. So it's really a powerful tool that I'd highly recommend that people use. And for me, beyond the resale value, likely the single biggest asset that PSA has, because it locks you in there. You can actually even have non-PSA items to collect. It helps you to track what you paid, collect notes. It'll track your market value. So I understand there are other apps that do this out there, you know, that you have to pay a service for, but it's all free on the PSA registry. So I think it's super cool, and I think a lot of people think it's cool. I'd never used it that much until kind of this last year when I've been dabbling in it, and I've personally found it really, really useful. I also find the reliability of their pop reports, where they talk, you know, they have half grades. You can search by player, you can search by year, you can search by now sport, since they added soccer. So, you know, I find you know, their pop report and their interface, their internet interface, in terms of data extraction and ease of use, to be absolutely top shelf and certainly the leader in the market. Now, of course, all this good stuff about PSA, you know, obviously has led to the huge backlog that they have, and the lead times are still absolutely insane, except for the high-end cards, which in my estimation is likely to lead to at least 2023. I just don't see how they get through 2022 with things getting back to normal. And by the way, it's going to be a new normal. It's not going to be $8 and $10 a card, I don't think, ever. But, you know, if we can get back to $15 a card by 2023, I think PSA becomes very viable for us, for collectors of the non-top tier stuff as well. Right now, I think it's the go-to place for top tier stuff. You have things that are, you know, 1,000, you know, to you know, 2,500. You know, you can still easily justify the value bump you get from putting it in a holder for, you know, a $75 express fee, which right now that's not the fee, but I bet that at some point we're going to start seeing things ratchet down from the 300 and 150 to lower amounts. It just makes sense. You know, there's not that many cards out there they can sustain at the 150 and 300 range, and those guys are getting flipped, you know, relatively quickly. When they get through the backlog, they will have created all this capacity, and they're going to need to fill those again, and they'll probably do it slowly, as any good business, you know, would do, and make sure they don't end up in the same problem. But, you know, in general, I think that at some point PSA will again become a set collector, you know, company. It's going to take at least another year in my estimation. So if you're that type of, but on the flip side, there's no other place for you to go if you're a set collector. If you have a bunch of low value cards, nobody has a registry, right? Besides PSA. So it's a real disadvantage for the other graders. So, you know, you also get with them, a peace of mind because they have a written guarantee. So if they mess up, they'll pay you for your card. I personally had a situation where they ripped a corner off my card and they compensated me for that. So and then if they stop grading something, they'll compensate you for that as well. That's my understanding. So that gives you some additional peace of mind. And some people prefer the holders. Again, they are thin, so it's nice and sleek, and they are really well sealed, and they are just light, so you can have a lot more of them. You can carry a lot more of them. They stack very well, so I think that's a good thing. Personally, I don't love it. It seems a little boring to me, a little flimsy, but the market has accepted this as a standard. So I think that it's you also want to worry not just about what you worry about if you're investing, but what other people worry about. And other people apparently really like this holder, and they're comfortable with it, which makes sense given the years. What's not great about them is still they really struggle with stickers, making sure the stickers stay put. So first we had the floaters where they'd fly all over inside the holder and potentially damage themselves. And then we currently have their solution is the Newton rings, which just looks bad because the sticker's pressed against and it looks like there's humidity or water in there. And it's not. And they just came out with an article explaining this on their webpage or their blog. But it doesn't have a good look. They really need to figure out a nice way to hold the sticker in there, because so much of the soccer card world is stickers. So, all right. The other thing that, so beyond the holders, which, you got to believe they're going to solve this problem. We're not trying to send somebody to the moon, and we already send people to space. It seems like on the daily. So we should be able to figure out how to keep a sticker in place. And I'm hopeful that happens sooner rather than later at PSA. So, the other thing that's kind of a downside for PSA is the risk of upcharges. So because they have this complicated algorithm and they're tracking all this data, they more or less know what cards, PSA graded cards, sell for. And as the soccer card industry has increased its volume of sales, it becomes easier and easier for them to say, well, this card that you sent in at $250 is now worth $2,000. And many times you'll be like, wait, what? But other times that actually did happen. So given the delay and the backlog, the soccer market has generally gone up. I'm kind of a little nervous that I have cards there that they'll say, well, this card now is worth, $2,000 when I sent it in and it was worth $300. And so, and that's something that I've had I probably have had like 10 or 12 PSA orders, and I've had this happen to me routinely. I've actually had them not grade cards for me because I thought their upcharge was crazy ridiculous. It also is important to understand how this happens. So they look at the last sales. So when they look at the last sale, so if there was an extraordinarily high sale, then that's not a great time to send in your card. So let's take an example. Let's take the Henri rookies that the PSA 8 sold for, I don't know, $18,000, $20,000 or something. So that card or sticker, a couple months ago hadn't traded, and you'd probably, could get that in an express order for $150, dollars. You send in the same sticker 2 months later, and your upcharge is going to be $1,000 plus. That's a gigantic difference. So understanding where cards have traded before you send them in is very important to understand and calibrate your upcharge risk. If you are declaring, hey, this is a $2,500 card, it better have traded around that $2,500 card, because if it had been trading at $10,000, you're going to get charged a totally different service level. And you should send it, walk through or whatever it is for that, and just get it back in a day instead of waiting a month and having to pay, the $1,000 anyway. And you can be very effective at doing this if you think certain cards have lower prints in terms of the transactions, and you can send in those cards to get graded at the time, especially on the fast service levels. And if you felt like a card was overvalued, you have in the last transactions, you have a potential to really eat it on the upcharges. So that's and I understand what they say. Hey, we have to pay the insurance, and we have all this stuff, and it's all based on the value of the card. So yes, but it's also about them making extra money. It doesn't cost them anymore to grade a card that's worth $50,000 to $5. It's the same amount of time. Now maybe that's not true. Maybe they spend twice as much, 5 times as much, whatever. But the incremental work for revenue is disproportionate, right? So, and then the last thing that I'd say is that PSA is doing by far the most for soccer. I mean, look at this. The magazine with soccer, there's now a soccer section in the price guide. Let me see if I can find it, right? But it's, this is super exciting. Look at this. We've got, the Madonna Calciatore, you got Mega Cracks, Messi 71 bis, and you've got the CR7, 2002 sticker with Sporting. So this is a small thing. The articles on the blog, the registry, all this stuff's moving absolutely what I would say in the right direction. And I was gonna say about a year ago, I reached out to them about all the floating stickers. They tried to do other things. They extracted soccer from miscellaneous sports. Now it's its own category. They're banning cards and investigating cards. Frequently they are, what I'd say is trying to do the right thing. And absolutely, this is a completely, it was a completely stepchild of kind of the business, and nobody paid attention to it. And there were a lot more errors disproportionately in soccer than in other places. But, more than any other company, I think they're really focused on doing the right thing. When they mislabel thing, they'll send you a box, you ship it back to them, they pay for the whole thing, they'll ship you your card back in a couple weeks. So, the reality is I don't have any complaints with PSA in terms of what they're trying to do, and I guess for me, I know a lot of people are, pounding the table. They're not doing enough. They're not doing it fast enough. For me, when I've been in this for a decade and almost nobody was doing anything, just seeing some positive progression is very encouraging to me. And when you have a company that has so much backlog and could be focused just on getting through the cards, seeing them really kind of invest for the future to get the stability of the data integrity and get everything else there, to me is very encouraging. Others are fine to have different opinions, but that's my current position. And I'd say that because of that, the vast majority of the grading that I do right now is with PSA. After most of my collecting career, going back 20 plus years in vintage, I would say it was with SGC. And in a way, that's also sad to me because SGC wasn't doing, and I'll get into that, some of those things. So to sum up the PSA piece, PSA is a clear leader in the high-end cards. There is no doubt that it's also the clear leader, the highest resale. It has the only registry out there. They have a written guarantee, but it's also the most expensive, and it has the longest lead times. And there is some significant risk of upcharging the higher value cards. Now, probably if you did some statistical analysis, you'd come to the conclusion that those upcharges actually are a good thing because they benefit you. That means you're getting a higher grade on a rarer, scarcer card. So maybe you effectively make more money. I think you need to carefully look at the data and the sales per card. And by the way, these are generalities. I always say, especially if you're going to put any serious money into a card, look at the differences between the different grades and try to understand if there are pockets of inefficiencies and arbitrage opportunities. So that's kind of my thoughts on PSA. So SGC, which I'm actually gonna call the second most important soccer grading company out there now. I certainly through 1990, I'd say they would definitely have the advantage. And then I think post 1990, Beckett probably has it. So so maybe not. Maybe they're in a more or less tie. But SGC, for those of you who don't know, traditionally focused on vintage. That's where they kind of made the name for themselves. They have recently transitioned into modern, doing the best that they can. I think that if you look at their sales price in modern, they don't hold up, nearly as well. They're probably in third place, although again, it depends on the card. They are, to my perspective, the most consistent graders. Like if you show me a bunch of different PSA cards and you ask me to grade them, I'm going to more frequently disagree with the graders than I will SGC. SGC, I'll be pretty spot on with them. And I tend to trust their grading a little bit better. They're also tough. Don't think just because they're cheaper, they hand out good grades. No. I mean, I know plenty of people that, crack stuff out of SGC holders and, get higher PSA grades. And it's funny, but if you send in an SGC holder, you'll get a lower grade. So there is this weird phenomenon going on, with the companies. But SGC, in general, is a really, really solid grader. I like to buy SGC cards because I feel like I know better what I'm getting. And to be honest, I don't fully feel that way at PSA. I know they had to add a bunch of graders, and I definitely don't feel that way on BGS, especially the sticker side. I'll get into that in a second. But SGC used to have a registry that competed with PSA, but when they moved to Florida and they changed their systems, they basically discontinued their registry. And I was very sad. I was a big participant in the SGC registry, and I was very sad because I used it to organize my cards, hold scans when I go to a show, remember what I have, and then see clearly if I could upgrade a card based on images that I had on the registry. So that all kind of went away, and now they're just like a grading company. Yeah, it's a grading company that has okay pop reports, but they're not very easy to use. They're not as bad as Beckett, but they're not anywhere close to PSA in terms of what you can search for, how you can look at things, how you print them. So the pop reports kind of bite. I mean, they're not like so hidden away and obscure like Beckett. They also since they apparently have lost a lot of their soccer records in the move and why they graded things a certain way, they also frequently will grade the same card as different things. And I know PSA, I've got even the Zidane rookie, I think I have 3 different copies that all have different labels, right? So this isn't just unique to SGC, but what PSA does is they map those titles on the card right here. They map it to a spec ID, and all of that data gets aggregated. With SGC, sometimes you have to know how they used to grade things, and then you have to self-aggregate yourself on the pop reports, which is extra work, and if you don't have the experience, you'll miss it. And you'll come up with the wrong conclusion on the pop report. So very important to understand some of these nuances. Their pop reports are good, but not 100% there, and certainly not nearly as good as PSA. Sometimes also, although not recently they are putting, kind of like what PSA did, a Mylar strip behind the cards to hold them in place, but in some other cases they would actually slip out of the little cutout and they'd fly a little bit over the place. Not as bad as PSA, but that was certainly something that happened. And I think most people, when they say, do you like the tux, this frame, especially when you have white bordered cards, wow, this is just absolutely gorgeous to me, how this just pops. And these tuxes are probably the number one reason why I graded with so much with SGC is I love the look. And frankly, they had great customer service. They had very consistent grading, so I felt incredibly comfortable with them. So this is the Tux, and I love it, and many people love it, and other people hate it. Again, this is where you need to calibrate your own biases on this. And you can get up charges from SGC with respect to value. It's much rarer than with PSA, but the type of charges you can get are research charges and custom cut charges, and those are seen much more frequently. I've been dinged by a number of those, in the past, and that's really irritating, especially when it's a card that they've already graded. I know they said they lost the data or whatever, but why is that my fault? Why should I pay for you to $50 for you to research something? And then the custom cuts, they were charging, $15 and $20, $25, and now it's like $75 or something. Okay, $75 for somebody to cut something in a special shape. Come on, that's a little ridiculous from my perspective. So love their my preferred grader for rare vintage, where I don't have the full album, where I can use legit data sources to verify the existence in the year of the set. Certainly, if you have a really special card that you want to custom cut, I think those are really special, different shapes or sizes. Like they do great triangles or circles. I think that's amazing, but you're gonna have to pay for it. So you're gonna get into it for what it would cost you to send it to PSA when it's all said and done between research, custom cuts. I think that they're a fantastic option for vintage at the current $30 day price. $30 card price. And you can get it faster. Now their lead times, were reasonable within a month or so. Now it sounds like they're getting more and more extended, but it's nowhere near Beckett and PSA. So it's still a legitimate thing that to go grade with SGC for cards that you want to sell prior to 2023, because we don't know when PSA or Beckett will get through their backlogs, and effectively your only choices are then SGC or raw. And I still think that as long as you're careful and not sending too low value cards, I think that in general it still pays for itself most of the time with grading with SGC, especially when it comes to vintage and truly rare vintage. Most people that are going after those are mostly buying the card, in my experience, not the grade. And whether it's a PSA 5 or an SGC 5, if it's a rare card, it's generally going to, the differential will be much less than it is between an SGC 9 and a PSA 9 of a pre-modern or modern or ultra modern sticker. So that's kind of my take on SGC. And personally, I love the Tux, but I understand that's not for everybody. The last major grader that people ask me about is Beckett, and why shouldn't I do Beckett, and how I love Beckett. And it's hard. This is really hard for me because Beckett was at the core of the hobby for so long, and I have a lot of slabs which I way overpaid PSA premiums to get them in Beckett holders, 9.5s with autos. There's a lot to traditionally like about Beckett. Here's another. I tried to show the same card in different holders, right? So this is a Ronaldo 94-95 sticker. And so, you look at them, I look at them, and we say, hey, which ones do I like? This holder feels sturdy. It feels very much like the SGC, holder. It feels like, it's welded. It looks, it looks nice. It has, the subgrades are always massively, liked generally in the market. The bad thing about, Beckett, recently for me is the fact, from my opinion, they're actively damaging the soccer segment because of their unknowledgeable staff and inability to listen and try to do the right thing. Most clearly indicated by the Ronaldo stickers, the CR7 stickers, not this Ronaldo, that the 2002 stickers that they clearly were not listening to a number of true experts, that there were some fake stickers out there that ended up getting into to BGS holders, and subsequently some of those were taken out of the pop reports. If you watch the time, they've actually eliminated some of them, so I'm not exactly sure what's going on there, but their inability to listen and be so defensive just was really left a terrible taste in my mouth. And you can still see that in the prices of these stickers today. It's terrible, because that's one of the most iconic cards in the industry. Dang, it's in the PSA has that as one of the 3 pictures they have for soccer cards. So I find it really disappointing how they approach that. You guys may also remember the Holland situation, where they said that the second version of the Holland stickers were fake, and they've talked to Panini, and then they had to basically retract it, and so the whole mess there is just so sad, because they were absolutely the premium brand. A lot of people love the holders. I still prefer the SGC holder, but I don't fault people for liking the holder. But one thing about the holders, and you won't see it on this Ronaldo, but sometimes, even though there's a little bit of a gap here for the sticker, you'll start to get some waviness in stickers in particular within this holder, and that I hate. I'm not exactly sure what's causing this. If it's their Mylar sleeve that's not flush and it's going against these inserts, but it's something that I don't like. And in general, if given the choice between a 6, this is like a 6.5 and a 6.5 in a SGC holder, I'm almost always going to take the SGC over the BGS now. And honestly, I never would have said that, 10 years ago, probably even 5 years ago on product that was from 2000 forward. I probably never would have said that. So, this is just, it's to me the saddest story, in the hobby. Was this amazing company that tracked prices for so long, that people had given so much credibility. They have nice slabs. They have, just a really cool product, and to see it just kind of, fall away, no communication at all, crazy now lead times that aren't even very clear about, like PSA does in terms of the through dates, the grade through dates and the percentage of each month. So, I think they started off in modern and ultra modern, and they did a great job. And now even those cards where they were clear premium PSA have fallen behind. I think they don't have a registry. Their pop reports are absolutely terrible, like so buried deep in the soul of the website, so hard to find. It's just terrible from a technology perspective. I know people that love the history and the brand and the holders and the subgrades. I think those are the only things holding them together. But for soccer, I think they're actually damaging the segment, not helping it. Whereas I think both PSA and SGC are trying to do some incremental things that help the hobby. And another key thing that I want to point out, and shoot, I'm sorry, I don't have a BVG one, but these normal Beckett holders with just the white here, the white labels, and the white insignia here has different set of grading standards, much closer to SGC and PSA, which have one grading standard across all cards ever. So BVG basically has a different set of objectives, which is for cards that are from before 1980. and before 1980, you can have BVG grade the card, and they won't have the subgrades, but they'll have much, much more lenient grading standards. So you can have a BVG card of, for instance, a Madonna Calciatore rookie, and you can also have a white label of the same card, and they could be the same grade but completely different standards, which really confuses collectors. And I would generally say that if you have a BVG card, I'm going to take at least 2 grades off. You can have a BVG 4 that has paper loss that for SGC and PSA is never going to grade more than a 2. So you just need to be aware of this. And in general, if you don't have a lot of experience, I would stay away from BVG holders as much as you can. And also right now, I'm staying away with BGS, even the white ones, for adding incremental stickers to my collection unless I find them to be incredible values. And we're getting to that stage in a bunch of BGS holders. The discount is just immense. So, if you're on the secondary market, you may find value, especially in the cards, which I still tend to mostly agree with their grading in the cards. So, I think that's it. They used to have this excessive, significant premium to PSA. Now they're very far behind. I'm sure if they'll ever recover. For me personally, I still consider them for modern and ultra modern, and I look for disconnects in the market in terms of price. And if they're cards, I'm going to feel more comfortable with BGS for stickers. And just to review, I will feel more comfortable generally with SGC for rarer vintage cards for soccer, where I have the documentation, but I don't want to go through the pain and suffering of trying to get PSA to grade it. Usually lower value, let's call it $500 or below, or $1,000 and below, or things for the PC, because I love the way that the holders look. And PSA, if you want to use if you either have high value cards you want to do now, you want to use the registry, you feel the extra comfort of their guarantee, for set collectors, I think PSA really is the place to go, but that's not a reasonable option probably for a year or so out. So anyway, I think I covered a lot of concepts that I had at the the beginning, where I get just a lot of questions of people saying, should I grade this here? Should I grade that there? I hope you have found that helpful. And I know in a way it's kind of boring, but in another way, it's absolutely the crux of our hobby, of the standardization. And you need to have some of the places where there are places you need to watch out, and other considerations that you have to have. So hope that was helpful to you. Again, I buy all slabs. I buy all 3 of these company slabs and even a few others, but 99% are in these 3 company slabs. They're still reliable. Just know where you could potentially watch out, and if that fits into your collecting style, hopefully some of the information in here has proved at least somewhat helpful to you. So if you like this video and you lasted this long, thank you, because I'm getting tired. Second of all, if you can smash that like button and subscribe, I'd really appreciate it. I do put a lot of effort into making this hobby enjoyable for everyone, and hopefully this helped answer some questions for some of you out there. Thanks so much. It's Al from El Rey Collection. See you guys next time.